My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I hadn't even opened the door yet. I want to tell you this the way it actually happened. Not the version I've cleaned up for people at work, the one where I sound calm and processed. The real one. It was a Thursday, my wedding was Saturday. 2 days out, and I still had a list. A real physical list. On the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like a lemon. Of everything left to close out. Final head count to the caterer. Final payment to the venue. Pick up my dress from the tailor because the waist needed to come in half an inch. Small things. The kind of things you do when a wedding is real, when it's happening. When there's a version of Saturday where you're standing in front of 40 people you love and saying the 2 words you've been building your whole adult life toward. Jake and I had been together 6 years, 4 of them in that apartment on Birch Street with the radiator that only worked in the kitchen. I know what his coffee order sounds like when he says it half asleep. I know the exact way he laughs, this short, surprised bark, like the joke got past his guard before he could stop it. He proposed on a Tuesday, not some big planned production, just a random Tuesday in our kitchen while I was doing dishes, because he said he'd been carrying the ring for 9 days and couldn't wait for a Saturday. I remember I still had a dish towel over my shoulder when he got down on one knee. I remember thinking, that's so him, impatient with anything that isn't real yet. I thought I knew what his silence sounded like too. Turns out I didn't. Turns out there's a kind of silence I'd never actually heard from him until that week, and I mistook it for stress. Wedding stress. Everybody gets it, right? That's what I told myself. That's what I kept telling myself. For about 2 weeks before that Thursday, something had gone quiet in him. Not angry quiet, just absent. He'd answer texts an hour late with one word. Okay, sounds good. He stopped asking about the seating chart, which had been his thing, weirdly, the seating chart. He loved the puzzle of it, who gets along with who needs to be 3 tables from his Uncle Ray, who's still not speaking to his cousin over some feud nobody remembers the start of. He built that chart on a whiteboard in our living room, color-coded, genuinely proud of it, and then he just stopped. I asked him about it once, standing in the kitchen, and he said he was tired. Work was a lot. He kissed my forehead and said 2 more days and we'd be on a beach in Tulum, not thinking about any of this. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? So Thursday afternoon, I left work early. I'm a nurse. I do 12-hour shifts, and my manager actually clapped when I said wedding in 2 days, which felt nice, felt normal, felt like the world was still lined up the way I thought it was. And I drove out to Ashgrove Manor, this old stone building with a garden out back where we were getting married, to drop off the final payment. Certified check in my bag, $22,000. Most of our savings, plus what both sets of parents put in. I remember the drive. Radio playing something dumb and upbeat, windows cracked, me singing along a little, badly. I remember thinking about the stone archway in the garden, where we'd stand. And how we'd done the tasting in that same building 3 weeks earlier, sat at a little round table by the kitchen, tried 5 kinds of cake, argued gently about lemon versus vanilla. He'd picked lemon. I remember that specifically now, because it's strange what your brain decides to keep. I walked in. There's a front desk, dark wood, worn soft at the edges from years of hands. A woman I'd met twice before, named Deborah, does the day of coordination. I said, "Hi, I'm here to drop off the final balance for Saturday. Emily Ward, the 4 o'clock ceremony." She smiled this professional smile and typed something, and then the smile changed. Just slightly, the kind of change you feel before you can name it. "I'm sorry," she said. "Can you say that name again?" Emily Ward. Or it might still be under Jake's name. Jake Bennett? She typed some more. Called someone else over. A younger guy, glasses. "Name tag," said Marcus. They both looked at the screen, and then at me, in this way that made my stomach drop, before either of them said a single word. "I'm not showing anything on our calendar for Saturday under either of those names," Deborah said. "Let me check our system more broadly. Sometimes bookings get filed under a different contact." 10 minutes. I stood there for 10 minutes while 2 strangers searched a computer for the wedding I was 2 days away from having. There's a particular kind of stillness that happens to a room when it isn't going the way you assumed it would. The lobby had this soft classical music playing, some piano thing, completely indifferent to what was happening to me 6 feet from the speaker. And somewhere around minute 6, Marcus said, quiet, almost like he didn't want to be the one to say it out loud, "There was a Bennett booking. It was canceled 3 weeks ago." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because it was the only sound my body knew how to make. No, that's not possible. We were just here. We did the tasting in this room 3 weeks ago. And then I stopped, because 3 weeks ago was exactly when he'd gone quiet. Deborah turned the screen toward me, which she probably wasn't supposed to do, and there it was. Cancellation confirmed. Date. A refund issued back to a card ending in the same 4 digits as Jake's. Not my card, his. I want you to understand something about this moment, because I think about it more than almost anything else that happened that week. It wasn't the venue. Venues can be rebooked, technically, in some universe where you have 3 weeks and not 2 days. It was that, in that exact second, standing at a darkwood desk, with a certified check for $22,000 in my bag, I understood that my fiancé had made a decision that erased my entire future. And then let me keep planning it. Let me keep picking flowers. Let me keep telling my mother what song we were walking out to. Let me keep humming that stupid song in the shower for 3 weeks straight, while he already knew. He let me build a house on land he'd already sold. I called him right there in the lobby. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Where are you? Call me right now, it's an emergency, I'm serious." And the little delivered receipt just sat there under my message, gray and silent, not even the 3 dots to say he was typing anything back. I stood by a window with a view of the garden, the actual archway, still decorated for whoever's wedding was that weekend, someone else's apparently, since ours had quietly ceased to exist, and I remember gripping my phone so hard the case cracked a little at the corner. I still have that phone. I never replaced the case. So I did the thing I'm not proud of. I did the thing everyone says not to do, and everyone does anyway. I still had his laptop password. I'd known it for years. It was our anniversary, which felt sweet at the time and felt like something else entirely once I was sitting in my car, in that gravel parking lot, hands still shaking, typing it in. I told myself I was just checking if maybe there'd been some mix-up, some billing error. That's the story I told myself for about 4 seconds, right up until I opened his email and saw the folder. He had a folder, labeled in his own handwriting font, autocorrect way, W stuff, done. Inside it, the cancellation email to Ashgrove Manor, dated 3 weeks back. A cancellation to the caterer, same week. A company called Thistle and Vine, whose owner I'd exchanged probably 40 texts with about dietary restrictions. An email to his cousin, the officiant, that just said, "Hey, don't need you to do the thing anymore. We'll explain later. Sorry, man." And under all of it, older, from almost 2 months ago, an email to himself. Just a note, subject line, "If I do this." I read that email in a parking lot, with my engine still running. It said he'd known since spring, since April, that he loved me. He wrote that. He actually wrote, "I do love her," present tense, like that was supposed to help. But that, he'd started feeling like the wedding had turned into a machine he couldn't get out of the way of. The deposits, the guest list, my mother's excitement, his mother's excitement. And that every time he opened his mouth to say something, he pictured my face, and he couldn't do it. So instead, he just started quietly taking the machine apart, piece by piece, behind my back, and telling himself he'd find the right moment to tell me. The right moment never came. 2 days out, it still hadn't come. He was going to let me find out from a woman named Deborah, at a front desk. What kind of person does that? What kind of person spends 2 months building the courage to cancel a caterer and never once builds the courage to look the person he claims to love in the eye? I don't have an answer for that. I've had months, and I still don't. Here's the part I haven't told most people though, because it's not the part that makes a clean story. I didn't drive home. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, none of the things you'd expect. I sat in that parking lot for almost an hour. Engine off now, just still. Watching other people's flowers get delivered to the loading dock for somebody else's Saturday. A florist wheeled in white hydrangeas on a cart for a wedding that was apparently still happening. Somebody else's. And I remember thinking, with this strange, flat clarity, I am 48 hours from a wedding that does not exist. My body is here, the dress is at the tailor, the 40 guests have flights booked, and there is no wedding. It's a strange kind of grief, grieving something that got erased instead of something that ended. A breakup, at least, has an ending you can point to. This didn't. This was finding out the ending had already happened, 3 weeks ago, quietly, in an inbox I wasn't copied on. I sat with that thought long enough that the florist finished unloading, got back in his van, and drove away. And I was still there. I called my mother next, before I even decided to. My thumb just did it. She picked up on the second ring, mid-sentence already. "Oh, honey, I was just about to call you about the flower arch. Your aunt wants to know if, and I had to say, Mom, stop, in a voice I don't think I've ever used with her before, flat and strange, and she went completely silent on the other end, which she never does. I told her, all of it, badly, out of order. She didn't say anything for a long time, then she just said, I'm coming to get you. And I said no, I'm driving, I'm fine, which was a lie. And she let me have the lie, because I think she understood I needed to be the one who decided something, anything, that day. I drove to his office instead. I don't fully remember deciding to. I just remember being in the elevator, watching the floor numbers climb, and then being in the hallway outside his floor, glass walls, everyone visible to everyone, and a coworker of his, Priya. I'd met her at a work party once. She'd complimented my shoes, seeing my face and going very pale, and saying, Emily, hey, is everything, and me just walking past her. He was at his desk, he saw me in the doorway, and his face did something I will never forget. Not surprise, relief, like some part of him had been waiting 2 months to stop carrying this alone, and my walking in was almost a mercy to him, not to me. You canceled our wedding. I said it flat, not a question. You canceled the caterer. You canceled Ray doing the ceremony. You got a refund, Jake, onto your card, and you let me leave work early today with a check for $22,000 to pay for a wedding you killed 3 weeks ago. I was going to tell you this weekend. I swear, I had it planned. You had a folder, I said. You had a folder called Done. He didn't have anything to say to that. Nobody has anything to say to that. I panicked, he finally said, quiet, not even looking at me anymore, looking at his hands. Every time I tried to say it, I pictured your mom's face. I pictured you crying. I pictured everyone finding out I did this, and I kept thinking there'd be a better time, a less awful time. And there wasn't. One. There was never going to be one. And I just kept running out of runway and doing nothing instead. So you decided the best version of this was letting Deborah at the front desk tell me? He flinched. Good. I'm sorry, he said. Small, useless. The kind of sorry that isn't for you, it's for him. Sorry he got caught mid-cowardice instead of finishing the job clean, quietly, before I ever had to find out from a stranger. Fuck you, I said, and I meant it the way you mean something you've never said to a person you've loved for 6 years. Not as a weapon exactly, more like the only true sentence left in my whole vocabulary. Everything else felt like it belonged to a person I used to be, someone with a seating chart and a lemon cake, and a mother excited about a flower arch. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I turned around and walked back past Priya, who was standing exactly where I'd left her, hand over her mouth, and I got in my car and drove. Not home. I didn't have a home that made sense anymore. His name's on that lease too. His stuff is in every room. His coffee mug was probably still sitting in the sink from that morning, from before any of this. I drove to my sister's instead and sat in her driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. My sister opened the door before I even knocked. She'd heard from our mom already. Everyone had heard by then. That's how these things move. And she didn't ask me a single question. She just pulled me inside and put the kettle on, and I sat at her kitchen table, which has this one wobbly leg with a folded napkin under it, and stared at that napkin for what felt like an hour while she made calls I couldn't make myself, canceling my hair appointment, telling the 2 guests flying in from out of state, gently, that Saturday wasn't happening. I heard her on the phone, in the next room, her voice going soft and careful, saying words like unexpected and I'm so sorry to my aunt in Ohio. And every sentence she said out loud made it more real, one guest at a time, like the wedding was being uninvented, person by person. Saturday came anyway. Time doesn't ask permission. I woke up in my sister's guest room at 7 in the morning, the hour I would have been getting my hair done, and I lay there and thought about the dress, still hanging at the tailor's, half an inch too big in the waist now for a wedding that would never happen, paid for, altered, waiting on a rack between somebody's prom dress and somebody's christening gown. I could picture the exact hook it hung on, 3rd row, near the window, plastic garment bag with my name on masking tape. I never went to get it. My mother called at 9 that same morning, and this time I let it ring twice before I picked up, because I knew the second I said her name out loud to another person. On the day it was supposed to happen, it would stop being a thing that happened to me privately in a parking lot and start being real, permanently, in the world. Mom, I said, and then I couldn't say anything else for a while, and she just stayed on the line, not asking, just breathing with me, until I could. People keep asking me how I'm doing now, months out, and I never know what to tell them, because the true answer doesn't fit in the shape of the question. I'm not over it. I'm not better off. Some days, I am furious in a clean, useful way, the kind that gets you out of bed and makes you change the locks and block a number. Other days, I think about that folder. W stuff. Done. 2 words that took him 2 months to get up the nerve to write, and about 11 seconds for me to read and understand exactly what kind of person could write them, and then keep sitting across the dinner table from me like nothing had changed, still asking about my shift, still saying goodnight, still lemon over vanilla. I got the check back for what it's worth, $22,000, uncashed, refunded to me weeks later after some very unpleasant emails with the venue's billing department. I keep the confirmation printout in a drawer actually, not for any healthy reason. Some nights, I want proof it was real, that there was a system, once, with my name in it, that for a while, I existed there, in a calendar on a Saturday in June, at 4 o'clock, Deborah called me weeks later. Ashgrove Manor does that sometimes, apparently, a courtesy call, following up. She didn't know the details, just that the file said cancelled by groom. Guest unaware at time of visit, which is a strange, clinical way to describe the worst afternoon of my life, filed away next to whatever notes they keep about parking and allergies. She asked if I was doing okay. I told her I honestly didn't know yet. She said that was a fair answer, and something about a stranger saying that, gently, without needing more from me than the truth, undid me a little in a way Jake's whole apology never had. I went back to the apartment once, about 10 days after, to get my things, when I knew he'd be at work. I'd told myself I could handle it. I couldn't, not really. But I went anyway, with 2 empty duffel bags and my sister waiting in the car with the engine running, like we were robbing the place instead of just quietly removing my life from it. The whiteboard was still up in the living room, the seating chart, his seating chart, color-coded, Uncle Ray 3 tables from the cousin he wasn't speaking to, my grandmother circled twice because she needed to be near an outlet for her oxygen machine. He hadn't taken it down. I stood there for a full minute just looking at it, at his handwriting, at how carefully he'd drawn each table, and I thought, you built this. You sat here with a dry erase marker and cared about where my grandmother's chair would go, and somewhere in that same stretch of days, you were also writing cancellation emails on your phone in the other room. Both of those were you. I don't know how to hold both of those being true. I didn't erase it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me wanted him to have to look at it a while longer. All that careful planning, hanging there uselessly, the last real thing either of us built before it all came apart. I packed my winter coats, the box of photos from my nightstand, the mug my grandmother gave me that he always used by accident because it felt right in his hand, and I left the ring on the kitchen counter. No note. Because I couldn't think of a single sentence that wouldn't sound like something off a greeting card. My sister asked, in the car, if I wanted to talk about it. I said not yet. She didn't push. We drove home with the radio off, both duffel bags in the back seat. And somewhere, around a red light, 3 blocks from her place, I started crying. Not the loud kind, just quiet, steady, the kind that doesn't really stop so much as run out for a while. And she reached over without looking at me, and just held my hand on the console the whole rest of the way, not saying anything, because there wasn't anything left to say that would have made it smaller. I think about the drive out there a lot, windows cracked, singing badly to something dumb on the radio, $22,000 in my bag, completely certain of the day I was walking into. I think about how close I came to just not knowing. If I'd shown up Saturday morning instead of Thursday. If Deborah's system hadn't flagged it right then, at that desk, in front of me. I think about how there's a version of that week where I find out some other way, some worse way, standing in a dress in front of 40 people, my father walking me down an aisle toward a groom who never showed. And some days I tell myself I got lucky, finding out when I did, 2 days early, in a lobby, instead of live. Other days that doesn't feel like luck at all. It just feels like the exact same wound, 2 days earlier. I still don't fully understand how someone spends 2 months building a folder labeled done and never once finds 30 seconds to just tell the truth. I don't think I'm supposed to understand it. I think some people are built for endings, and some people are built for disappearing, and I loved one of the second kind for 6 years without ever knowing it. The dress is still at that tailor's, as far as I know. I never called to ask what they did with it.